Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Another Monday morning. Our learning together should be in the merit of a refuah shalema, complete recovery for Nachum ben Esther, who's really had some very, very difficult news, family member of one of our group. And we just pray that he should have complete healing, and also that he should feel held by Hashem at this very, very difficult time. I'm going to start by sharing with you a post that I couldn't print because it came through my messages and I couldn't find it. But this was a post made 8 hours ago by someone called The Real Israel. Can anyone tell me, why do bad things keep happening to good people? Sounds like a familiar question, anyone? Even the faithful questioned God. Even the righteous broke. Jeremiah wept. Job, Eov questioned everything. David begged God not to forget him. Today their words feel closer than ever. How long, O Lord? If you've ever been here too, please remind me I'm not alone. So little does she know, this is a picture of a lady overlooking Jerusalem, overlooking the Western Wall. Little does she know that this is what we talk about every single week. And so she's definitely not alone. There's a wonderful group of people here in Bushi who are asking the same question. Week on week. I'm going to start with an email. Dear Jacqueline, as I was lying in bed in the middle of the night, I began to think about, was I where I was meant to be? We do not choose where we start our lives. In my case, that was decided for me when my grandparents left Russia and Poland. How fortunate that they left before it was too late for them to do so. My early home was where my parents chose to live, but then where I went was my decision. And then when I married, it was a shared decision. Living in a world which seems to be tossed around by leaders who do not speak or act as the leaders we would hope for, it feels as though once again we are on shifting ground and our security is uncertain. Some people have followed paths we could never imagine and earn their living by being an influencer, a job description that was not on the list of things that my generation had to choose from. I have never met an influencer, but I think many are not influencing us in a good way. We were bombarded with advertisements, which always seemed harmless enough, till advertisements became tools for propaganda. Social media has made it easier to spread hate and prejudice more quickly. It is not the origin of evil, but the speedy messenger. I then decided that we are all influencers, and that how we influence is the important thing. Bringing up our children, we hope to help them grow into people who will use their influence for good and will live lives that will continue in our Jewish traditions. What we do is only a small ripple, but when you throw a stone into the sea, the ripples are wide and spread far. If we throw many good stones in the sea, our influence can be spread. The only conclusion to this long thought is that on a Monday at 9:30 a.m., I am where I am meant to be, and I am so thankful that I have this space and for everything that you and all our rabbinic team does for us. With love. So I want to think about influence and influencers. I love that idea, but it's a new job description. I still don't understand how someone on social media or YouTube makes any money. And apparently they make lots of money. It doesn't make, like, who's paying them? I'm watching for free. I know. I kind of got that, which means if they're the employee, the advertisers are paying them, who's the product, or what's the product? Actually, we are the product, right? So we are being bought by influencers, which is a really interesting way of looking at what influencers do and how social media works. It's very manipulative and it's scary. So I was thinking about two different influencers this week, And Rocky also just pointed out to me that we're obviously in the week of Holocaust Memorial. And if we think in terms of propaganda and the power for good and bad. So the first one that I wanted to touch on, because it came up in my social media feed, and I've heard of this person, but I most definitely don't watch anything that they share because I want to have calm and zen and feel good about life. Is someone called Miss Rachel. Now, the reason I heard about her was as I was leaving Kiddush the other day, someone was spewing such anger at what's been going on. But I think this week, I believe she liked a post that was it wasn't Israel, it was very clearly Jew hatred. I don't even remember what the line was, but she liked the post. Now, what's wonderful to see is we all have to have a bit of Jewish sense of humor. So a lot of the Jewish influencers or the Jewish comedians on social media are having a good time making fun of, because there's a video of her where she's crying and she's clearly feeling so much remorse that she doesn't hate anyone and she's only bringing good into the world. Just to be clear, for those of you who don't know about her, she is very, very anti-Semitic, very, very anti-Zionist. She's really, and she's a children's character, so they're all watching this person who is spewing hatred towards Israel.
She's a real person.
She is a real person. She's on social media. She's like a teacher. So she's, hello everyone, how wonderful, nice to see you. And then she's saying these, do people know what I'm talking about? A few people know, yeah. Am I describing her? I haven't looked at her, but I'm describing it right? Yeah. Okay. So they love her, right? Yeah, the children love her, exactly. So one of the Jewish comedians was explaining, because what her big line over this comment was, by mistake she pressed like instead of, I can't remember.
Instead of ignoring it altogether?
No, it was something else. Like it, what's on the other side? Anger. Yeah, the anger one. So one of the things that, Miss Rachel, I'd like to explain to you, the like button is all the way on the left and the dislike button is all the way on the right. Maybe we need to make a song about left and right. So I think if you can't beat them, you've got to find a way to laugh, right? But really talking about what influencers are, and I know a few people here were with us on Wednesday night. On Wednesday night, we had the opportunity to hear from the most incredible lady, Sabrina Cohen-Hatton. I'm so pleased that everyone who came was here, but I honestly wish that the entire community, I actually wanted to try get my kids to come and they had too many other things on, but everyone, right? Everyone needs to hear this story. She is just amazing. And what I loved about if anyone would like the video, she doesn't want it spread publicly, but I can send it to you privately. So send me an email and I've got it now as a link that's a hidden link. So just don't pass it on, because we have to respect. Part of the reason why is because with a surname like Cohen, she has been the target of anti-Semitism, and she's in a very high profile position, and her daughter's struggled with anti-Semitism, so much so that she's taken her daughter out of school. So, you know, a 16-year-old, really awful things. But what's incredible about her, she's, you know, objectively not had an easy run of things. You know, her father died when she was 9. Her mother struggled terribly with mental health, so much so that life at home became unbearable, and she slept rough from the age of 16 in a really awful part of Wales that, you know, she said that you wouldn't want to walk through there during the daytime, that kind of area. And she was attacked while she was sleeping rough, treated like, you know, real rubbish. And eventually, she took her GCSEs even while going through this. And eventually she managed to get a position, first part-time. She managed to find somewhere to live, save up and find somewhere to live. And then she managed to get a position in the fire department. And she's just climbed higher and higher and higher. She's a fire chief. It's like unbelievable to hear this story. But equally what was unbelievable to hear was how her Jewish DNA shaped so much of who she is. And her father comes from a Moroccan, very, very Jewish Sephardi family. And you can see it's so much part of who she is. And her grandmother, who's 103 is she spoke about the idea of being a real model rather than a role model. Sometimes role models are like, oh, it's impossible to be like them. She said that's her real model. And again, like her grandmother had the craziest story about when they were being attacked in Morocco, and someone attacked her with a machete in her head, and she was thrown at the bottom of a pile of bodies. And her grandfather went and he took out the body. And as he did, she gasped. So the whole audience, when she was telling this story, would all go, right? She was alive. And it's unbelievable. And they escaped to Israel and they built a life there. And that's where her father was born. But it's just unbelievable when you think of, I don't even think grit is the right word, but what these people were made of and how that has influenced. And not only did she become a very, very senior member of the fire department, she also did a part-time PhD in 3 years, so much so that they had to kind of think of how to re-register her because it wasn't part-time at all, while her daughter was 1. So, yeah, great. No? It's like really unbelievable. And then afterwards, I was Googling her and I realized she's the same age as me. Like what she's achieved in life is just amazing. So I said to her at the end, when I grow up, I really want to be like you. And I do really feel like she's just amazing. But her PhD was in neuroscience and psychology. And I love how she spoke about the fact that when you go through challenges, when you go through trauma and tragedy, it does imprint on your DNA. But she wasn't using that as an excuse. Therefore, we've all of us have in our ancestry, if not ourselves, gone through some really awful stuff. That's not therefore that excuses us and we don't need to achieve anything in life. Actually, that was like the drive for her. And I think maybe that is the connection with the Holocaust, or with whatever our background, whether it's the Holocaust or whether it's from the Sephardic countries, whatever our families have gone through. Or whether it's the pogroms going further back than that everyone, or like here we heard, coming to this country from Poland and Russia before the Holocaust, every one of us has incredible real models in our history, that not only the ones we met, but even the ones we didn't, that have had this massive influence on us. And I think that that's so powerful in terms of realizing who we are and believing in who we are. She spoke also about the idea of a seed, and when something challenging happens to you, it's a seed that you can choose to allow it to grow. And that's really what she's done. She now works with Prince William, thank you, with Prince William to help the homeless, because she knows, she knows about it. She knows, she has first-hand experience. So really, from her position now, she's not forgotten her past. She's using that to grow. And we've got next Sunday night is Tu B'Shvat. Yeah, next Sunday night is Tu B'Shvat. Really highly recommend for everyone to come and join the Tu B'Shvat Seder, which is at 6 p.m. Ben Sion Morris runs it every year. And as we know, he's had a particularly really difficult year this year. So it'll be extra special if everyone's able to join him. But it's really, Tu B'Shvat's a really interesting time. We think about it in terms of faith. If we think about it in terms of our Emuah discussions, Tu B'Shvat is really a funny time to celebrate trees. Look at the trees outside. Like, what are we celebrating in 1 week's time? And even in Israel, right? It's such an interesting time to be saying that this is the birthday of the trees. And we're taught that the idea is that the sap begins to rise within the tree. So it's not that suddenly you see the blossoms, you see the fruit, you see things are happening. It's right at the beginning of the potential. That's what Tu B'Shvat's all about. It's still winter, but it's just beginning something's beginning to happen beneath the surface. And I think that the reason I think that's connected to Emunah is I think, especially when we talk about which we often talk about, and we don't really know even what we're sharing, but we often talk about the times of Mashiach. I think especially the times that we're living in, we're not yet seeing this like incredible salvation and celebration. Definitely not, right? We're seeing some really challenging times, but part of our faith is that this is heading towards something that's going to blossom, something that's going to come through, something that we're going to be able to celebrate. So I think that, again, having those connections to the winter, and it is so clever that we live in seasons. You know, if it was spring all the time, if that's your favorite season, if it was spring all the time, you wouldn't appreciate spring. If it was summer, or, you know, I don't love the heat, but if you love the heat, in this country, you're fine. It's never summer all the time, right? But if it was summer all the time, you wouldn't appreciate the summer. If you love the snow, if it was snowing always, there's nothing special about it, right? But the fact that things change, the fact that we are in a darker time, literally, like it gets dark early, it's dark outside, there's not as much sunlight, there's not as much times of sunlight, like it's okay. In nature, we know that we need those seasons, we need the trees to be able to be buried underground, to develop, the seeds need to grow. But also in terms of our lives, I think we can all probably point to the challenges in our lives that have just made us stronger and better and grow more. It's unbelievable how that happens. But, you know, listening to Sabrina, that really was such a strong message from her, how what she's gone through in her life has really helped to form who she is. So I think that, you know, if we want to think about influencers, and I really was reflecting on this as well in our role, like as a community rabbi in Rebbetzen, how lucky are we that we get to meet people like that? And that she really came to the Shul out of the goodness of her heart. Like she wanted to spread her message. And her message was also really strongly connected to the Jamie Mental Health Awareness Shabbat. Again, a topic we've spoken about here, but we need to continue talking about. When we think about winter, we all go through difficult times. We all go through times when we're low. We all go through times when we're nervous. And we all go through times where it's more extreme than that. And what's amazing is that we can find help. And those of you who are here on Shabbat will have seen Elchanan sitting on Elchanan and on the three of them sitting on the bar stools, which yes, they did get from the 3 crowns. So the thing is, I didn't have such an issue with it because he went on Friday to get 2 bar stools. I thought that was ridiculous, but okay. But then Esther Marcus was in Shul, which again, you are where you're meant to be. How amazing was that? And one of the families who was here could really do with some support, and now they've connected. Like, it's just amazing. But so there were 3 speakers and there were only 2 bar stools. So what do? You send someone back to the pub to pick up another bar stool, and then you bring them back after davening. Anyway, yeah.
How do you tie this wonderful woman? She's amazing. And she has gone through her life, as we know, this amazing life that she's done. So, and we can take inspiration, as you say, but what part of that, it's not faith that drew her, it's her Jewish heritage, which she's picked up on and has carried her through. But it's not a faith, is it? We're here looking at why we have the faith, or try to find the faith. She doesn't have that faith, does she? What she has is our heritage of what we do as people.
So I think she has both. I do think that. I think it did come through. I mean, I'm curious. I think it did come through. Go on. What would you say? It came through.
I thought it came through, and she spoke really strongly about Jewish resilience through life.
Yes.
So is Jewish resilience just epigenetics, or just based on all the trauma we've gone through, or is it actually something that's like fed to us almost in our mother's milk? You know, like, is it part of the story of our people? And I think the reason that maybe we struggle with that is because, you know, we're a very big people, and not everyone talks about believing or says that they believe or might say exactly the opposite. But you know my opinion on that. I think you just need to scratch a bit below the surface, and eventually they're probably angry, but there is belief somewhere in there. But yeah, I think her resilience came from both. I think both the trauma that, you know, she's gone through herself, her family's gone through, like, unbelievable to come out of that. And again, if she would have made nothing of her life, I don't think anyone would have judged her, because she was dealt a really difficult blow. So it is that those are her free choice based on what she's gained from her family. But I think there was also a very strong sense of faith.
She made some reference to this or something.
Yeah.
So what I was wondering, what the connection was, that it was a woman who apparently was not connected to the Jewish community, but then obviously she sort of just threw it in. So I didn't know what
So the reason she mentioned it was because that's how I got the connection there. Rabbi Liss, I think, had heard her Desert Island Disc and decided he wanted to meet her, brought her to his shul, brought her to the rabbinate to speak to us. Unfortunately, we were away then, so I didn't even get to hear her, but I got to hear her, obviously, when she came to the shul. She was with her family at Seder night at his house this year. So they've got, you know, his wife, I was with his wife on Saturday night. She, you know, she said that they're good friends, like they really have connected. And Sabrina's come on a journey. You know, she keeps Shabbat, she keeps kosher. She's really, like, unreal if you think about what. Because I wanted her to come on Shabbat because that's obviously the easiest time. Like, we get the biggest crowd, it's the best for most people. And she doesn't travel on Shabbat, which is amazing.
It was interesting. She was talking about keeping kosher, and he said she seemed to know everything.
Yeah.
And he obviously didn't question it.
Yeah.
They were just in conversation. And we were discussing it afterwards, thinking, oh, this woman
Yeah.
seems so secular.
Yeah. And she asked Elchanan at the end as well she wants to learn more, like, is there an online course that he knows of? Oh yeah. So I think that, and she lives now near Kingston, but they're moving to Hampshire because that's where she works. And you know, she's very aware that there's no Jewish infrastructure. Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, like, there's nothing Jewish there at all, as far as we know. But I found her, there's a company that delivers kosher food, so I said I'd send that to her. But you know, this is, I think, a really interesting model even for us to think about, because our Judaism is so personal, but actually it's also so centered around our community. Like, we all live in a very Jewish community. And even those of you who used to live in a very small Jewish community, it was a very strong, small Jewish community. Like, that's what defines us, is we live amongst our own.
She's come from such a dark place to have picked herself up, like, on her own. And gone on her own journey was just
amazing. And I have to say, I think that for me, that, you know, we come back to this idea of free choice. Like, she didn't have a choice in what hand God dealt her in terms of living in the family she lived in, and the tragedy that happened there, and the mental health breakdown, and the difficult environment. And, you know, was it a choice to move out of home and live on the streets? It didn't sound like it, really. But her choice was, I still want to do my GCSEs. Then her choice was, I'm still going to save up and make a better life for myself. And it's not saying that everyone who's homeless on the streets has a choice, because everyone has a choice, but it's not necessarily at the same point. This is a really amazing idea that's brought down by Rav Dessler, who lived in Gateshead, actually, and then I think maybe moved to Israel, but I'm not sure. But Rav Dessler, I think, was at the beginning of the 1900s in Gateshead. So I met his student, was Rabbi Mordechai Miller, who was the head of Gateshead SEM. And we used to do, many of you know about the Gateshead trips that like JFS goes on. So I went as a madracha with them, and I actually met Rabbi Miller. So he was the main student of Rabbi Dessler. So I got to meet his student. Like, it's amazing when you think about how the generations work. Similarly, like, just as a different example, but Elchanan's named after someone called Rabbi Elchanan Bunim Wasserman, who was one of the great leaders of the generation who was killed in the Holocaust. And Elchanan's grandfather had met him when he came to America fundraising. So I think when you have those, like, personal connections, it does bring things alive more. But Rav Dessler talks about something called the point of free will, the Nekudat HaBechira, the point of free will. And what happens is everyone has a point at which they can choose to do right or wrong. Now, somebody who's brought up in a society that, I don't know, let's say mugging little old ladies is the norm. So there, and is encouraged, let's say, maybe their point of free will is, I could either just take her handbag, or I could take her handbag and hit her over the head. That might be their point of free will. Sorry, it's a horrible example. But that might be her point of that person's point of free will. Whereas someone else who's brought up in a different sort of society, their point of free will might be, I just heard some really interesting gossip. I could either tell everyone about it, or I could realize that actually that's not a kind thing to do. Like, everyone has a place where you make a choice. And what's interesting is when you make the right choice often enough, then what happens is that boundary moves up. So your point of free will improves as you become a better person, right? When you were 2 years old, did you have a choice whether you'd have a tantrum or not? I'm not sure. Maybe, right? What do we think? 2-year-olds have free choice? Probably not. Okay. By the time you're 7 or 8, you are making a choice to have that tantrum or not. If you are still at the age of 40, 50, or 60, and you're still making a choice about whether you should have a tantrum or not. I mean, maybe our grown-up tantrums look a little bit different than the children's. But, you're lying on the floor kicking and screaming. You would hope that our point of free choice has moved. So we're talking about moral choices. We're not talking about what life gives you. You don't have a choice, right? Financially, health-wise, we don't have a choice. But in terms of morally, we do have a choice. And what happens is, as we improve, as we work on those muscles, as we become better, our point of free will changes. Or as we decrease, as we allow ourselves to sink into a place of, moral depravity, or, a place where morality isn't respected. So then our free will changes as well. It's a really interesting concept to think about, because what that means is when we go out of here today, every one of us can think, oh, am I making a free will choice right now? Now, there's certain things, whether you're in the shop and you choose to get a blue jumper or a red jumper, that's not moral free will. That's okay. Maybe something influences your choice. I don't know. Maybe it's just random. Who knows? I'm sure there's science to support either argument. But when you're deciding something and it feels difficult, that's your point of free will. If it's not even difficult for you, so if it's super easy for you, then you're not at that point of free will, right? So I'm hoping that when everyone walks out of here today and meets a little old lady, nobody has an urge to steal her purse and hit her over the head, right? I'm hoping that we've got a nice crowd over here today, right? So, that's not even a temptation for us. That's not, that we're not even holding that. But it could be, if you're thinking about something that's really quite challenging, that might not be that might be way beyond your choice. We can think about it in terms of Shabbat observance. I think it's quite a helpful model, actually. So every one of us will know what's normal for us on Shabbat. Yeah. So in my keeping of Shabbat, I have no temptation to walk over to a light switch and turn on the light. It's not a free choice. I don't get rewarded for not turning on. I mean, maybe a bit, but it's not a challenge. I've never in my life, unless I did it by mistake, but I've always grown up that I don't turn lights on Shabbat. Now, there could be someone else who that's so beyond anything that they're even thinking about, to turning on a light switch is something that's so part of what they do on Shabbat. But their challenge might be thinking about, okay, so, do I light candles before sunset, or do I like them a bit later, even though before sunset, and that means rushing home early, etc. Do I make sure I do that, or does it not really matter and I like, an hour after Shabbat has begun? Maybe that's my point of challenge. Everyone has something different. And what's beautiful about this model is that doesn't mean that I keep Shabbat and someone else doesn't keep Shabbat. We each keep Shabbat on our level, right? We each keep kosher on our level. We each have a battle that we're going through on our level. There are plenty of things on Shabbat that I could improve. Trust me, right? Everyone can. That's the amazing thing in Judaism. You don't ever sort it all. You've never been able to do everything. You're never the ideal human being. Do you know how I know this? What would happen if you were an ideal human being in every way? You don't need to be in this world anymore. What's the point of being here? The reason we're in this world is to grow and improve. And sometimes growth and improvement means our point of choices is increasing. And sometimes it's increasing and going up and down and up and down. And that's called life. And that's called the challenges of life. I think it's a really helpful model. And I think that that's important when we were talking about Sabrina, to think about the idea that her choices are free will choices. But I do think, I agree, I think a lot of what guided her and the strength she raised. So when we say it's from epigenetics or really from her heritage, I think that in itself is faith. I think believing in our people in itself is faith. So I heard or read? I think I heard Emily Damari talking on because it's 1 year since she's come out of captivity, and actually we're coming up to it's a year since Naama, Daniela, Leo, no, Alva. Leo, and Leo, Karina, all came out this week, which is again amazing. And this coming week, I think it's at some point next week, maybe. It might even be the 30th of January, I can't remember. So I think it's Thursday or Friday, is Agam Berger came out. Thursday. Do you remember she didn't come out on Shabbat? It was so important to her mum, not knowing that Agam had been keeping Shabbat while she was in captivity. But so this is the incentive, the inspiration behind this class. So one of the things I heard Emily saying, reflecting on a year, and a year that must be so challenging and so amazing, and growth and trauma and everything all at the same time. But her message to us was like, please don't stop holding on to the idea of unity and the incredible idea of our people, and thanking Hashem, because that we know is such a part of who Emily is. And I think that those two ideas are interlinked. I think the idea of part of my emunah, part of maybe other people feel this as well, is looking at the incredible people that we're part of, that has survived through the generations, that has survived from all the nations that want to destroy us. Like Am Yisrael is incredible. And I think that was the message from Sabrina. That was Emily's message to us, is it's heartbreaking when you see the hatred. So since last week's class was the terrible, terrible news in Jerusalem of the 2 babies that died in the daycare center. And I was really thinking about if it was something I wanted to share. And I actually really do, because I feel like for some reason, as soon as we hear Haredi, it kind of sends a trigger signal to us almost. At the same time, I saw a picture again of the Bibas family. And it was a picture of all 4 of the Bibases, and someone had put on the background a picture of the Bet HaMikdash, of the temple. Did anyone else see that? It was on social media. Really, like, that's what Yarden is waiting for, to be reunited with his family. And what was really interesting, and I really tried not to go there and not to follow and not to read, but when this thing happened in the childcare center in Jerusalem, understandably, people are upset. Understandably, things need to be investigated. Understandably, whoever's responsible needs to be held accountable. But what was interesting was that so many people, and especially in Israeli society, straight away jumped on the kind of stereotype of Haredim, too many children, don't care about their family, breaking all rules, etc. Now, whether all of those things are true or not, I really had the voice of Emily ringing in my head, thinking about this idea of, well, actually, can't we just love each other? Can't we just see that there are two families who are bereaved? Can't we just focus on the loss that we feel as a people? You know, when we found out when Kfir Bibas's body was returned to us, nobody spoke about his politics, about his religious leaning, about, you know, everyone just wept. We all just cried. And I actually really felt that. And then I felt like Hashem sent me a little hug. And I'll tell you, I don't know if anyone saw this story, but Chani Katz is the mother of one of the babies who died in Jerusalem last week. And I saw someone wrote a post that he was kind of getting caught up in this storm of, you know, these people and what they do, and they're different to us and the society, and like getting all caught up in it. And then his wife said to him, you know, Chani was the person who came to us when we lost our son as a soldier in the war. They have a jewelry company, and they made a necklace for every one of the soldiers that died, and they brought it during the Shiva, and it was a heart, and on it it says Gibor Shel Yisrael, the strong one of Yisrael, with a picture of the soldier as a gift to the mother or the wife of the soldier who died. And this is the lady. So she's been doing this since she started on October the 8th. She's been doing this with some friends of hers, going and giving that to families. Now, what I thought was, thank you, Hashem, that you helped me to realize this is an amazing person. But why did I need to see that picture to realize that? Every one of us is amazing. And again, I'm not going down. We had something similar when we were talking about Charlotte in Switzerland. We're putting aside for a second the politics and the responsibility and the accountability, and it should never have happened and all those things. But we need to remember that this is a baby that's part of our people. And this is a family that's part of our people. And I think the fact that, I'm sure anyway that they're all amazing people, but the fact that you could see so obviously, to me, felt like a gift. It felt like a way that every one of us can say, what an amazing mom, what an amazing lady, what an amazing part of our people, and how tragic. And I do think that that's what we should feel whenever we hear, especially from our people, of people who are going through difficult times, of people who are going through loss. But I think coming back to the idea of faith, and with the post we started with, actually, you know, Eov asked why, and he lost 10 children. There's something about that I can never wrap my head around. We just can't understand it. But I think part of the faith can be in the people themselves and seeing their response. And I think that's when you see how incredible our people are. And Chani wrote a beautiful poem that she's shared. You sometimes see, I mean, before this happened, you could see what an incredible person to go and visit every family. And believe me, you know, Romema is the heart of Haredi neighborhoods. They are as different as can be from every one of those soldier families. But they never for 1 second said, oh, we can't relate, we don't feel the loss. Our politics differ hugely, right? Our understanding of Israel might differ hugely. Our understanding of our mission might differ hugely, but we are one people. And I think that is, to me, like this incredible strength of faith. Sometimes even when I don't understand God, always when I don't understand God, right? I saw something clever. Someone said, I really wouldn't want a God that was able to be understood, whose ways were able to be understood by mere mortals. Like, could you imagine if we could all understand God's ways? They'd be quite simple. If it was understandable by all of us, then any of us could kind of run the world. The fact that we don't understand them is part of what makes them God's ways. But even putting that aside, to be able to focus on the beauty of our people and to tap into the strength of our people, I think that's part of faith. I do think that that is part of faith. And each one of us, whether it's the people around us or whether we go backwards into our history and tap into those people as well. It is incredible when we think about where we come from and what people have gone through to bring us where we are today. And I'd say also what we can do for our future generation, the influence we have. You know, someone's 103-year-old grandmother is the influence on everything she does today. Each one of us has the ability to influence the people around us. We can be that influence. And part of what made her such an amazing influence was the fact that life was really hard. So when we're having a hard time, that's part of being that influence. You know, you're not going to get millions of pounds on YouTube. I'm still not really sure. Yeah, no one's selling adverts on us, right? But the impacts you can have on the people around you and on the world around you is huge. So that's my thoughts for today. I'd love to hear if anyone wants to share, but please do speak loudly so everyone can hear. So.
I think 103-year-old influencer on a daughter or granddaughter is in a very close shot. And when you've got from us, who are the world's biggest influencers at the moment, changing ordinary good people's minds in the millions, it's a major, major issue. And Simon Sharma, historian, wrote in the Telegraph, saying that our history and our heritage has been taken away by lies that people now believe is true. And Holocaust education is being taken away from the agenda because people believe that Israel has committed genocide. And he says in his article that the Nazis committed genocide. Israel did not commit genocide. But unless that story is told again and again, and that millions of people hear it, our history will be eroded, and Holocaust memory will be eroded. So, yes, we all have incredible role models in our lives that direct us as individuals. But millions of people are being directed in a way that we can't compete. And unless we do compete in a way that the truth is always the truth, that is going to be the hardest bit, because lies have been told, and that is now becoming the truth. And he said that can't be allowed to happen, and it is happening.
It is happening. And we live in a post-truth era. It's crazy how, you know, even like AI is getting better. Like you don't actually know if that person was there. It's really scary how. So actually, it's my dad's special birthday today, so we're not going to be here this Shabbat. We're having a special weekend together, and my niece just had a baby a few weeks ago. So my dad has a picture of him with my sister, my niece, and the new baby, and he used AI to put on his mother and his grandmother. So that was 6 generations, and we knew his mother, but we didn't know his grandmother. But it's amazing. It looks like they're all holding, looking at this baby. Truth, like it's so clever, but it's not real. And I think that Sassy reminded me as well, and I think it's really important to talk about this because we speak about the suffering when we're going through it as a people, and we continue to go through it. But what the Iranian people are going through right now is, and I did remember it and then I forgot to say it during the class, but I think it's also really important to talk about the idea that they are really trying to make a shift, and it's costing them their lives in the thousands. And again, the influencers aren't talking about it because it doesn't say the word Jew in there anywhere. So there's nothing to talk about. But we are the Jewish people, which means we are a light unto the nations. We will talk about it, and we will pray for them, and we will hope that things will change. But I do think that as much as I didn't see the article, but I appreciate you bringing it here, as much as we live in this frightening world where anyone can say anything and people believe them, part of what I do have to believe in, that ultimately the good will prevail. And I think maybe again that can connect to the Holocaust. At the time, you know, the power that Hitler had, the propaganda, and that was before social media, the way people were just hanging on to his every word as if it was true. And it didn't matter if what he was saying was right or not. People were desperate to, you know, he was hero worshipped. And you can hear from, you know, if you watch clips of him speaking, they were mesmerized by this barking and frenzy and like the power of a leader. And at the same time, that can all fall down. Soviet Russia, I know it's not direct Holocaust, but it's connected, right? Think about, you'll all remember this more than I will, but think about how it looked like there was no way that that's ever going to end. And then what, in 1 minute, the whole thing came collapsing down? Every part of our history. And I think we'll see the same with Iran. You know, every stage in our history looks like Egypt lasted for, depends on the commentary, 210 years. And it looked like we were never going to walk out free again. The Jewish people were so used to slavery that when someone came to them and said, come, I'm going to free you, they said, no, life's good here. Why should we leave? Egypt was a Holocaust. And yet it looked like that was going to be forever. And I think it is going to be the same. We feel like we've been in galut, we've been in exile forever. And you know what? Part of it feels comfortable. I know at the moment that anti-Semitism isn't great, but you know what? Things are okay in Gushi and we live a good life and we're with our friends and we're with our community. And for the most part, we forget what's going on around. And yes, it looks like the world's imploding, exploding, I don't know what. But, you know, life's okay and you get on with each day. Kathy's going to share something with us.
Yes, this last Shabbat, when we came to Haftarah, I started to read some of the explanation, and there was something that struck me, and you've brought it up so many times today. I've actually got to read it. I went to look for it, and it was in the Haftarah of the bow, and it says the prophecies that close the book of Jeremiah address the nations of the land, and they are harbingers of doom that awaits those peoples who participate in the destruction of Yehudah and Jerusalem. In one, the prophet describes the expedition of Nebuchadnezzar to conquer Egypt after he'd laid waste to Yehudah. In the prophet's eyes, all the peoples are transient and can cease to exist and be replaced once they have served their role in history. As such, they can be punished with utter destruction for their cruel and wicked acts in the context of world events. It is God who directs the course of world history, and it is he who will hold wicked states to account. It is he, too, who will always leave Israel standing on the world stage, even after punishing it for its sins. And I read that, and I thought, what? And we just talked about it.
Yeah, where's Stalin? Where's Hitler? Where's Titus? You know, when you go to Rome and you see Titus's arch? It looked at that time like Titus is there forever, and the Jewish people are in chains and being brought in slavery. They're being brought to Rome, and there's never going to be heard of again. Has anyone met a Roman recently? They don't exist. You know, we're coming up to Purim, the story of Persia. Persians don't exist. Iran is not ancient Persia. Every nation, they try to destroy us. We know this, right? They try to destroy us. God saved us. Let's eat, right? Every time. It starts at Pesach in Egypt, but through the generations. But we are still here. And I think when you hear Emily speaking and you hear Leo speaking, you hear each one of them. Liri, sorry, that was the name of her. You hear Liri, every one of them. We're here. You know, Agam played her violin that was saved from the Holocaust. That you're talking about one thing that survived and a person that survived. They tried to destroy us. They tried to destroy us, but we're here. We are here. And we're going to be stronger and we're going to be better. And we are heading towards a better time. But boy, is it hard right now. But I think holding on to that, you know, when you look at Hamas or call it Iran, because that's where it comes from, it looks like that it will never crumble. I don't know who has this sense, like watch this space. I do. It feels like something's going to happen. I just pray that Israel should be safe. No more people in Iran should lose their lives. We all should be safe. But something's going to shift. You can feel it in the air. And yes, it's nerve-wracking. And yes, it makes us worry. But it does feel like this is part of God's plan. So going back to that article that says that, you know, no one can get rid of this fake truth. Let's see. Communism, it's gone. Nazism, it's gone. Let's see what happens.
The main difference is that in the past, it took forever for news to go from one country to another. It's now happening in milliseconds.
Yeah.
And when normal people, good people, our neighbours,
Yeah.
turn on you because they're getting brainwashed by what they read, that's a different scenario. So we will remain good. We will remain believers in our faith. And we will continue to do good things for Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah.
But when other people read total bias that are untruths as truth, and that's a big problem.
For sure. But I'd say it's a new problem and it's an old problem because our neighbours in Germany and Poland also believe things. And yes, it didn't come in milliseconds, but it took years to get rid of that, even after the war. So history does go in waves. I think we're, you know, it's only been 2.5 years and this vile lies are being believed. I'm not saying it wasn't there before, but it wasn't there like this. But I think that we're on a wave. I don't know when it will have we reached the top? Will it go? Who knows? But it's definitely something really interesting to be watching in the context of history. Nicole.
I hear what you're saying, Sam, and it is terrifying. You know, it's but I think the other thing that is happening, and it's not happening on the same scale, but it is, you see it and you feel it all the time, is that people that maybe felt removed from their Judaism are feeling stronger in their Judaism. They're coming back. People that have gone away from their Judaism are coming back to it. And that's another consequence of what's going on here. Yes, there may be some Jews who want to fly under the radar and deny that they're being Jewish because they're frightened. And you see the consequence of all this hate because the inspirational woman who came to talk to us, I wasn't able to be there, has had to take her child out of school. But nevertheless, while it is frightening and scary, there is always a flip side that we have to hold on to, and we have to see that while other people are turning against us, we are still growing stronger as a people. And long may that continue, that more people come, and those that are here remain strong and become stronger. Because that's the only thing we can do while this is going around us.
Definitely.
And I think we have to be very careful to see what's going on, but not be too freaked out by it, because we will come through it.
And I think that comes back to choice. I think that's, you know, our free choice is not to look at every single scary video, post, news, watch. You know, you remember I shared with you about after October the 7th, the dry cleaner told us this lady was transfixed watching the news 24/7. It's not healthy. So yes, to know what you need to know, but also that's part of the choice, is to kind of know enough so that you can pray. That's what I think. Know enough about what's going on so you know that there's a lot to be praying for, there's a lot to be hopeful for, but not too much that you can't focus, you can't function. I think we've got to get that balance right. Yes.
Just listening to what Nicole said, as you say, people are becoming more and more involved because they feel they want to support Judaism, even if they didn't before. But I think also we need not only to look inside and gather together and like that, we need to look to the outside world and communicate, because again, that could be wrong. You know, they need to see what we are, and we're great people and good people. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. It's not just about turning inwards. It's about also showing the world that we are good. Don't hate us. We're good people.
Can we not see it as fortunate? We are in a time when if God in each generation lets other people try to destroy us, then and we get to our weakest point where we are trying to bring ourselves back to strength as a Jewish nation, when we see that with media, social media, etc., we're starting to lose it. And maybe it's a positive that we are in that era where we are personally watching how, as a nation, we are getting stronger ourselves, and we will see that we will not be destroyed as in past attempts.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, it feels frightening and like a privilege to live through these times. I shared right at the beginning, after October the 7th, a quote, and I can't remember where it's from, but one of the sages, probably in the Talmud or something like that, said, I pray for Mashiach, but please don't let me be around to kind of watch it unfold. These are frightening times, but if we go back to that idea of the rope, it's being shaken. It's being shaken so violently. And all we need to do is just hold on a little bit longer. And it's hard. So I think that you're right. It is a privilege to be living in these times. And it's also challenging. Maybe it's a good thing we're not given that choice. This is the era we were born into. I don't think things were rosy during the times of the Crusades. I don't think things were rosy. We know things weren't during the time of the Inquisition, during the time of the Holocaust. This is the generation Hashem put us in, with all the tools and all the skills that we need to be. We are where we're meant to be, right? This is the generation. And I think that it is amazing that we're seeing that people are coming closer. At the same time, we're also losing many. But for us, each one of us, all we have is our free choice. So that's what we can do, is step closer. Just to let you know, one very exciting thing coming up is on Shabbat, the 13th and 14th of February. I have mentioned before, I have an amazing Rebbetzen teacher, mentor, incredible lady called Rebbetzen Yehuda, who lives in Geula. She's a Breslov Hasidah. She didn't grow up like that, but she's an amazing, amazing lady, educator. She's coming to us for Shabbat, so definitely be there for that. For the ladies in the community, we were going to be having an oneg, singing and sharing stories on Friday night, like after the meal. So I'll be sharing information of that, and people who need to be walked home, etc., we can help organize that as well. So there'll be more information on that. Sorry, gentlemen, you'll have a chance to hear her on Shabbat day. But I have asked her as well on Friday morning. Don't groan. I know it's Shabbat. You'll do your cooking the night before that week. So on Friday morning, the 13th of February, she is going to be running a Living Emuah class for us, which I am beyond excited about. She's not here on the Monday. That's why we're doing on the Friday. So that week, there'll be one on the Monday at the beginning of the week, one on the Friday, and then there won't be one on the following Monday because it's also half term. So just make sure that's in your diary. Whatever else you've got planned, the 13th of February, we want everyone to be here. You can come with your questions. 9:30.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the Friday of the Rebbetzen, isn't it?
Yes.
Is what? Yes, that's right. That evening exactly is the bat mitzvah. That's right. So it's a weekend of celebration. Okay. See you all soon. Have a wonderful week.